Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome. Nice to see you there, Standing Stones, Thomas, Kyle Smith. Let's see. Everybody's starting to come in there. Gary Spikes. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, this edition is brought to you by USCCA tonight. And if you are traveling and don't know your state laws on your concealed carry laws or other states, please make sure and check the link out in our description, also in our comments. Make sure that you know before you go. Check them out, ladies and gentlemen. So how you doing there, Chris?
Good. Happy Monday. How you doing?
A lot
Things
better.
good?
Yeah, a lot better.
Good. That's good to hear. I'm doing a lot better. Hopefully, post St. Patrick's Day, everybody's doing well. Didn't drink too much green beer. I went out to a festival yesterday with my daughter, and she talked me into getting on one of them rides. I knew better. I got a rule: if it goes up and down and round around at the same time, I can't do it. And man, I was green as the beer that people were drinking. It was bad.
I bet.
I literally had to go sit in the truck for about an hour just to relax. But
the older you get, the worse the rides are.
Yeah, I can do roller coasters all day long. I just can't do that. Anyway, we got a guest tonight, Mr. Pat Rance. I actually had the pleasure of going out with David Sidoti's group, and he was camping one weekend and got to meet him. He's got some cool stories, so I wanted to bring him on and have a little chat about some Bigfooting.
Pat,
come on down.
Come on down. Nice to meet you, sir. Introduce yourself.
My name's Pat Rance. I live here in just north of Orlando, down here in Florida.
So what got you into Bigfooting?
Well, I was always kind of interested in it, and I guess about 15 years ago or so, I stumbled across that one website that has all the reports on it, and then saw, after reading a lot of those reports, I saw that they were doing an outing down here in Florida, so I signed up and put my $300 out there and ended up hosting the whole outing at my cabin. So wow. I didn't get a refund either. But met a lot of great folks and had a good time and really got, started networking with a couple of the other guys. Then I got promoted to investigator. No pay raise though. That works. But it gave you access to all any new reports that were coming in for you.
That's interesting.
So after a while, I went on being another guy. I went and did what they would call an investigation. Mm-hmm. Talked to the people and hung out in the area a little bit. And then another report came in from the Green Swamp from this guy that turned out to be kind of semi-homeless, but he was camping in the Green Swamp. And we went out and talked to him and ended up camping a lot out there. We literally would go out there just about every weekend in that one area. And we were hearing some weird stuff. And then after maybe about 3 or 4 weekends out there, we found some footprints. And then we found more footprints and even more footprints. And even though this guy turned out to hoax some things, we caught him. But all the footprint instances, he was with us. So there was no way that he snuck away and, made some fake prints or anything like that. And we were really, really skeptical as hell anyway. So we were trying to see if we could reproduce them by running or, stomping and things like that. And we just couldn't reproduce them. We were finding tracks up to 18 inches, an inch or so deep in the sand, 1.5 inches. We found a running trackway where then it slowed down to a walk. So the stride was like 9 and 11 feet from footprint to footprint, and then jumped over a road, which was, we measured 20 plus feet from, one, like a left footprint on one side of the road and then a right one on the other side. It rained that night. There was nothing in the roadway. And you could see where it landed. It was really deep and hard. And one of the other guys I was with, he had some casting material. Mm-hmm. And it was in that footprint, the landing footprint was in a swale. And it was sand, like sugar sand swale, but when the water dried out or drained down, it was that real fine black silt.
Yeah.
Perfect medium for catching details. So he cast that footprint and got toenail marks in the front of each of the toes and dermal ridges all throughout it.
Wow.
It was 18 inches by about 8 inches wide.
So,
we
Pat,
go
looking
ahead.
at your descriptions, so it was obvious that you caught on between the ones that were fabricated and the ones that could not be fabricated, correct?
Yeah, we caught him. We were out night hiking one night, and he was on ahead of us, and it was pitch black, but he had a cigarette going. We could see that he kneeled down, and then as soon as we started walking that direction, hey, looky here! I found a footprint. Right where he just kneeled down.
Right. But could you tell a difference between an actual print and the ones
Oh
he
yeah,
made? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I just want the audience to know that you could tell.
We could, but then
Okay,
we were
great.
finding also we over the course of a couple of months we found where we could distinguish the tracks. We could pretty much identify 5 separate individual tracks in this one
Wow.
area of the Green Swamp. Just one was kind of like a banana shape, like maybe it was injured, and the biggest one was like 18 inches by 8 inches wide, and then there
It's a
was
Bigfoot.
yeah, and then after a while, I saw one, and I think it was that biggest one. And it was real brief, and it was at night with a small little flashlight, but it was pretty up close and personal. And at that point, I was hooked,
Tell us
because
more about that. What happened?
well, we were camping over there in the Rich Loam area, Green Swamp,
Mm-hmm.
and I had set up we went down this fire trail. It was about 4 feet wide, like an old fire break trail, with a tent. I went down there late in the afternoon and set up a tent and put my camcorder on a tripod inside the tent with the door of the tent open.
Mm-hmm.
So we hung around till right about dark, and then I just hit record, and we walked back to our campsite. It was about 150 yards, I'm gonna say. And then about 11:30 or so, me and that guy that I was talking about that did do some hoaxing, we decided to walk back down there because I didn't want to leave my camcorder out there all night, even though it was inside that tent. So we walked down this trail. We got to the tent. I reached in and just kind of folded up the legs of the tripod. The battery was dead. This was back in 2008, I guess. So the batteries have come a long way and things like that. But it had a little mini 8 tape in it and stuff, so it's only good for about an hour and a half or whatever it was.
Right.
So I folded up the tripod, turned around, and we started going back down. I mean, I didn't take 3 steps, and at the time I had these little bitty. I'll put my hand up there. So those little bitty pocket flashlights, that took a couple little batteries, but they're pretty dim. They're not real good, but they're handy to have in your pockets. That's all I had. I turned around and started walking back up that trail, and man, right there in the middle of the trail, right in front of us, 25 feet away, was this 7.5 foot tall basketball player looking thing, but hairy. And he jumped sideways off the trail into the palmettos and stood there looking at us over the top of the palmettos. And he was just kind of like it almost went up on his tiptoes, because he got a little taller and trying to get a good look at us. And then he just bolted off through the woods. And I was, then this whole thing happened like 4 or 5 seconds, really, really quick. So I didn't get a great look at him, but enough to see what it was and what he did. And then he took off. And I'm thinking, why is this thing? He's huge and obviously fast as hell. He probably followed us all the way down that trail. We never even knew he was right behind us. Why is he afraid? Why is this thing scared of us? I didn't even have a gun, nothing. So all we had was a little flashlight pointing at him.
Curiosity.
So I was intrigued, why was it so afraid? I mean, and I was even more so hooked. It's like, all right, well, this guy didn't want to be seen. He was in stealth mode, but we turned around, before he knew what was happening. So I think he goofed up. That's what I really think. Because we got to that tent, I just reached in, grabbed it, and turned around, and boom, we were almost face to face. So I really, really got hooked, and I started making contacts through the internet with different forums, the old Alabama forum, talking to people and stuff. And yeah, for a couple of years.
That was in the Green Swamp when you saw him. Okay.
Yeah, Rich Loam. That was I'll say 2000, probably 2007. I'm gonna say 7 or 8. I can't remember which. I think it might have been 7. So I started making contacts with other folks on like the old Alabama Bigfoot forum, And I ended up driving out to Oklahoma for a long trip, and several trips to Texas where my friend Lori lives over there. And made friends with these folks in Alabama, or I'm sorry, Mississippi, near Hattiesburg, that owned pretty good sized property. And they had seen him around their house and on their land. And they had seen him in the daytime, and they named him Eddie the Yeti. They had seen him, and he was very, very big. So I made a couple trips up there, and man, I had some really eye-opening experiences up there.
Like what?
Well, the first trip I drove up there was about, I don't know, about 12-hour drive, pretty good drive. I got up there late in the afternoon, set up my little tent on their property. They had a couple of what they call pond dams, that they built these ponds, and they're stocked with fish. And then the house was a couple hundred yards away, and it was a big, they were a well-to-do family, very big house and a big farm. Where the owner, he could just keep his tractor and his Harleys and his four-wheelers and stuff in there. They didn't really race horses or do anything, they just kind of semi-retired younger guy. But anyways, the first night I was out there, the first 2 nights on my first trip, man, the vocalizations and the wood knocks, it was just insanely crazy all night. I didn't do any wood knocks or anything. It was just normal, run of the mill, regular night up there. And it sounded like Hank Aaron's all over the place.
Wow.
You could hear these loud bangs just echoing through the trees and across the kind of rolling hillsides, and it was insane. I mean, crazy. And I couldn't go to sleep. At about 4 o'clock in the morning, I finally got out of the tent, crawled in my truck, and locked the doors.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was pretty intimidating. So then the next trip we went up there, I called my 2 buddies that I was researching with at the time. They were down in South Florida. And the one guy drove up from West Palm Beach area, and he got some really good audio recordings. I didn't really have any audio equipment, but he drove all the way up, drove all night, got there, got some audio recordings, some really good stuff. We planned another trip for all 3 of us to go up there. And we had 3 tents. Each one of us had our own tent, and then we had one of those pop-up canopies, a couple tables and chairs, coolers, that stuff, right kind of in between us. And we're about 20, 25 feet from the wood line where it was like cut pasture, and then it just created, then the end of that was the woodland, or, heavily wooded. And it was a real cold night. We stayed up to about 11 or so. And we were hearing some wood knocks and some vocalizations. And went to bed. It was real cold. I would say lower 40s, upper 30s. For me, that's pretty damn cold.
Yeah, it's chilly.
So crawled in the tent. It was about 10 minutes changing clothes, putting on some dry socks, and putting on the hoodie and stuff, and getting in the sleeping bag and rolling up and getting comfortable and situated. And as soon as I got comfortable and it got quiet, this thing walked right out of the woods, right up next to my tent, literally standing 6 inches away from me. And I could hear it breathing over the top of the tent.
Wow.
Now, I had this, at the time, I had my first thermal imager camera. It was kind of heavy. So what I did is I cut a little slit in my tent. And then I used a piece of 1-inch PVC pipe between the base of the camera to a tripod, and I put that on the table next to me in the tent. So I could kind of spin it around like a periscope. And I had a portable DVR that ran off of 12-volt rechargeable batteries. It had a little screen and stuff. They looked like, what you would call a tablet now. So I could see what's going on out there. And I would, every time I'd wake up, I'd spin it around and things like that. Well, it was pointing over at my buddy's tent, because I was thinking, oh, well, you got to point it somewhere. So I figured, well, maybe he'll be a good target. I'll just leave it there for now. So it wasn't in the right direction where this thing walked up on me. But the back of that camera had a little LCD screen like an old phone. And it's lit up. And I had a plastic grocery bag over it because we're expecting dew. I didn't want to get wet. But the thermal imager, as long as you don't have any wrinkles in the bag in front of the lens, it'll go right through it, no problem. So I had it all bungeed or zip tied down so no wrinkles in front of the screen. And I think this thing was curious about what I was doing. And he walked right up next to my tent, literally standing next to my right arm. My cot was touching the wall of the tent. and I could hear him breathing over the center of the tent. And it's it's about a 6'6" tall dome tent in the center, 6'6". And I could hear him breathing over top. And I think he was looking in the back of that camera saying, what the hell is this thing?
Be looking for my gun.
I didn't want to move. Seriously.
Oh, true.
My blood pressure shot through the roof, and I literally could hear it in my ears just going, And I know everyone within a 30-yard radius could hear it. It seemed like it was that loud, To me, it was.
Right.
And so I just laid there thinking, oh, shit, oh, shit, oh, shit. And then it took like one step, and then it was across the other side of the tent, maybe 2 steps. And then I walked over there to the pop-up canopy. Well, we all had little walkie-talkies, and we didn't talk at night. If we hear something, we just click the radio and make static. Click, 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 right? Click, click, click. Don't say anything, just start listening. Well, the one guy that I had the camera pointed on, he had headphones on from his audio recorder, so he's listening. And I'm going click, 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 click. I'm just freaking out, And he takes his headphones off and goes in the walkie-talkie. What? Did you guys say something? And I'm like, oh, shut up. Click, 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 click. But the other guy heard it, and he was kind of near that pop-up tent. He heard footsteps coming, and then we could hear a few things moving around in that pop-up tent, and then we could hear something like this. Let me see if I can make it do it. The pop-up canopies have that thin aluminum tubing legs, real thin metal aluminum.
Yeah.
It sounded like somebody with fingernails tapping on it. We heard a few things lightly moving around in there. The other guy in that third tent, he heard the big footsteps coming right towards him. He reached over in the dark and grabbed his 45, which was on top of a cooler, and it made a noise. So he grabbed it in the dark, put it in a sleeping bag, and loaded a round into, racked a round into it. As soon as they made that noise, that thing took off like a shot. Boom, 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 boom. He was gone. I didn't even get a chance to spin the camera around. I was still like frozen solid. It's all happened in a minute. So that was quite a night. And
I would say that'd be a little.
Yeah, that thing was huge. I could tell he was huge just by the sound of the footsteps and walking.
Did you guys find any footsteps or prints or anything out around you, or any
we
evidence?
We looked pretty hard the next day. It was field grass, and it hadn't been cut in a while, so it was 5 or 6 inches deep. And we'd been walking around and stuff, so there was no bare sand or rock, clay or anything. It was all grass, but
no telling what was what at that point.
Yeah, how your feet catching the grass and stuff. So, but so we were all, I was really pretty freaked out, not scared. I mean, after the fact, I wasn't scared anymore, but just like really, this was like really cool. This is I'm trying to find these things. I want to experience this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So then a couple months go by, and I made another trip up there by myself. And my friend from Oklahoma, Old Crow, she came out there with her son, and she's friends with the lady that owned the house, and she had a son. So we had 3 tents.
So this is the sound that he made.
Absolutely, yeah. That was it.
1911.
He just wanted to play with his gun.
No, I wanted the audience. I wanted the audience to know.
Yeah, that's good. That's perfect.
I think he heard it. Eddie heard that, and he went from it. So the third trip I made up there, we had 3 tents, my tent, and then the girls' tent, which was the lady at the house and the lady that came out from Oklahoma, and then the boys' tents, which was the 2 boys of the ladies. And we were going to camp out there. We're about 100, same field, same house, but about 100 yards up the hill. And nothing happened the first night, but the second night we were under a tornado watch. And I had my thermal imager set up through my tent. It's just one of those graphite rod tents. And it got really windy, and we're under tornado watch. So the lady that lived there took the boys in the house because we're under tornado watch. And me and Old Crow, my friend from Tulsa area, we sat out there under a pop-up canopy, kind of hanging onto it like this. We had a little fire pit going, and we heard just sitting there talking. She's sitting to my left and just talking and yakking and carrying on. And we heard what sounded like a Mack truck coming through the trees right in front of us that we were facing. And it was planted pines. But they were pretty good size. You know, they weren't the small ones. They were up 20, 25 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded like a truck coming through there. And we're like, holy shit, what was that? And then everything got real quiet except for the wind through the pines. You know, you can hear that.
Right.
And then so we just looked at it. 15 minutes, we're just sitting there talking. 15 minutes later, she says, oh, I think we have a visitor. And I looked straight up in front of him, and there he was. He's standing right there at the edge of just inside the trees looking at us. And let me tell you, that guy was every bit of 10 foot tall and at least 4 foot wide. You clearly see him. It was a full moon, but heavy clouds, and it was so windy, it was almost like a strobe light effect between the clouds, right? Bright, dim, bright, dim.
Mm-hmm.
But you could see him standing there. And at first we're like, holy shit. And then we just wave at him. We talk to him. Be friendly. That's what I'm trying to experience. Right. So he just stood there and looked at us, and we're waving at him. And after a few minutes, we just started talking and carrying on like no big deal. We'd look up every few minutes and just wave. Well, after maybe 10 minutes, a second one walked up. Now, Eddie the Yeti was easily 10 foot tall. The second one was maybe 8 foot something. We waved and said hello, just carried on like it was people, just like your neighbors came over to the fence. You just wave at them. We went.
They waved back?
No, they just stood there. They didn't do anything.
I didn't think so.
But they didn't leave, and they weren't aggressive. So we're like, this is like really cool, You're just watching us. We're watching them. Then a third one came. Then a fourth one came. And then the fifth one was just a little bitty guy. I bet he was maybe 3.5, 4 feet tall. It was like the whole family. It was like Eddie the Yeti and Mrs. Eddie the Yeti and 3 kids. But it was funny because it was just like people. That little one could not stand still. He was shuffling his feet. The other ones, they were just standing stock still. But that little guy was kind of shuffling around just like a little kid, a human kid, right? That can't stand still. And it was the coolest thing. We just wave at him and talk, and we keep talking to each other, and then we, just kind of, and it probably went on. I didn't look at my phone, or I didn't have a watch it. 35, 40 minutes. It just went on, and they're like 30 feet in front of us. We're in the field. They're right just inside the tree line. And then Patty, she looks at me and she says, I think it's time to go. Because it's like the mood changed. So all of a sudden, we just had this feeling that
didn't belong there.
Yeah, it's time to go. So she walked with a cane. She had real bad back problems. So I told her, I said, you get up and just go get my truck. It was like behind us a little bit. And I wait till I heard the car door close, the truck. And then I got up and I just waved and walked back there and jumped in the truck, started up. And we drove to the other end of the property and parked under a floodlight in front of their barn. And then the storm hit. So we didn't see or hear anything else that night. But man, that was like one of the really coolest experiences I've ever had.
Really looking at you like, don't you know a storm's coming? What the hell y'all doing out here?
Yeah.
That's weird, huh?
That's probably what they were thinking. Stupid people traits, something.
Have you ever heard them talk to each other?
Yeah.
What do they sound like?
Well, it's funny you say that. I should have sent you this earlier. Friend of mine up there at Creepy Mountain, about 10 years ago, probably.
I've got the audio.
Oh, do you have?
Go ahead and tell the story while I pull it up.
My friend Keith was up there coon hunting, which they do a lot up there, and he couldn't find one of his dogs. We had 2 or 3 with him, and then so he kept calling for his dog, and then the dogs in the back of the truck would bark, and he was like, "Oh, screw this." He drove into town, dropped off those dogs, came back up on the mountain, and he had one of those little hunter's ears, real cheap little gizmos with a headset and a little. Looks like a satellite dish, right, with a trigger, with a pistol grip. And he'd call for his dog, and he was using that to listen to see if he could hear his dog barking somewhere out there on all those hills and mountains, and then he'd drive to that direction. We thought he heard something growling at him, and he hit record. So it only recorded like 8 seconds or something. But once he recorded, you can clearly hear it. It's some kind of, he's talking to him, or he's talking to one of his buddies. This is up on Creepy Mountain. Wow. Oh, yeah. And so I sent it to that Scott Nelson one time. he analyzed it. And he said it's the exact same language as the Sierra sounds, which was 1972 in California. And this was maybe 10, 12 years ago in Alabama. Go ahead and play it.
All right. Hopefully, you know what? I didn't double check my audio. Hold on again. Redo it again.
Yeah, I told Ron Moorhead I would have choked his rear end out if I was with him.
Why are you
Sitting there
antagonizing them?
instigating them, yeah.
Uh-huh. All right, here we go. Hopefully it works. I'll play it again.
I think you should. Hard to hear.
One more time.
Man, it sounds like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah, but I can tell you that the quality is not coming across. Like even my phone is just a regular phone, but when I play it on my phone, it sounds.
It
much
sounded
more
pretty
deep.
good in my ear. I don't know how it sounded
Okay.
to you, Grizzly, but
No,
yeah,
it
sometimes
sounds good. No, it came through.
On my
good.
side, it didn't. So I'm hopefully.
But
everybody else-
anything that doesn't sound human is still scary.
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty wild.
So
I
it
mean, what
works
was your
out
all's
like that.
what was your all's thoughts when you first heard that?
Well, my friend Keith heard it and recorded it, and he had it for a week or two before he ever sent it to me. And a lot of the other guys from up there, they heard it first and all, and I was like, "Holy crap, what the hell?" Because you hear a lot of weird stuff at night, but it's just little snippets and pieces. Not a strung out like a whole sentence or a conversation. You just hear little things, and sometimes it sounds like you don't know what, and then other times, it sounds like someone talking. The deep voice, but you don't, and then it stops. So you don't get real long out drawn conversations that I've heard. So, that was a pretty good, 10 seconds or whatever it is, 8 seconds. That was a pretty
some of that reminds me, Grizzly, of Barb's. There's some of her audio that has come
It
across
did.
like that before.
It really
So,
did.
It's very interesting. Really, really cool.
yeah, it was
I love it.
real cool. So I've been going up to Creepy Mountain since I think 2009, anywhere from 3 times a year to 4 or 5 times a year, usually a week at a time. And most of that time I stay up there by myself.
Have
Can't
there
buy
been a lot of sightings there, or
Oh
is
yeah,
that something that
it's hunting lease, and a lot of guys see and hear things. And there's one up there that several of the guys have seen, and they call him the Blue Man because his skin looks old and gray, like bluish, thin hair. And there's been people have seen and heard things on that up there for generations, literally generations.
Wow.
So, but it's a cool place to, if it's not hunting season, I got the whole place to myself. So I'll go through the lock gate and drive up there with my little camper that I made and outfitted, and I can take that up those logging roads and real rough country up there, and make my way around to that nice little, it's 2 or 3 acre little lake, Springhead little pond, and I camp right up next to that. Man, I've had some crazy shit happen there. Excuse me, crazy stuff over the years. So, but I'm probably going to go up there in May again. I haven't made a trip yet this year. Just been busy. But I'll be heading up in May for a week.
Can't be smoking on air too. I didn't tell you that ahead of time. So.
Oh yeah, yeah, sponsors and affiliates.
Yeah, they prefer not.
Yeah.
What's the craziest thing that you've ever experienced yourself?
Well, up there at Creepy Mountain, had several pretty cool things happen. One night I was camped there up there by that lake, and there's a little what we call a spillway out of the lake, and then there's a little concrete roadbed that goes over. It's like just think of it as like a little stream. It's all rock, and it controls the level of that lake. When it rains a lot, the water will spill off of that and go down the waterfall. But we drive across it, whether it's running or not. and the other side is a rock hillside, maybe 30, 40 feet high. And from where I set up, it's probably, I don't know, let's say 100 feet across to the other hilltop. So I was in there asleep one night in my camper, and I had my camper has like ambulance type doors in the back. And each one has a little slide up window. And I have a big RV side windows on the sides and another one in the front. So it was summertime, and it was pretty warm. I had all my windows open. And I heard what sounded like somebody running down that rock face behind me. My head was pointing towards that other rock face. So I heard like 3 running steps on like someone's bare feet were slapping on rocks. Slapping. And then there was a gap for like, I don't know, a second or 2 or whatever, where there was no noise. And then a loud thud on my side and running footsteps right between the campfire and my camper. The campfire is maybe 12 or 14 feet out to the side. So it went running down that rock face, jumped over the water, and ran right next to my camper. So I'm hearing stereo out the back windows, then the side window, and then as it went down the road and up the hill through the front window. So, like in old days when we first got that really killer stereo set up and you could hear the sound circling like the guitar riffs or whatever. That's what it sounded like, except it was running footsteps. In the back, then the side, then up the front. And I started laughing. Like, holy shit, what, And I was up there all by myself. Another time, same place, same type of situation. I was just dog tired, sound asleep. And I woke up, my whole trailer was being rocked back and forth like this. And it's 6 foot wide and 12 feet long. Just barely enough room to stand up in. And again, then I heard some like running footsteps off. So again, yeah, they're just like,
I wouldn't have slept again after that.
Well, I sat up on my bed and I was like, holy shit. And then after a while I started laughing again. I was like, they just rang my doorbell and ran. That's what they did. That's the same spot where Bill White Cal Bronco was sitting there camping one night, and he heard something out his little camper window. And the next morning he was walking and hiking and went up on that same opposite side cliff face or that rock face. And he turned around and looked back where he was camped and up the other road, and right on top of his camper. Now he was in there sleeping all night by himself with the windows open. Someone had gently placed a 40-pound rock on his roof, and he never heard it. He heard something out his window, like maybe the bushes moving a little bit. But this thing was, rock was like this, and it weighed like 40 pounds.
Wow.
It's the same exact spot. Same exact spot.
Not thrown there, not dented or anything, just placed up there?
No, it wasn't launched or thrown at it because he never heard it. He was inside.
It didn't fall down. It didn't fall down the mountains and land there. I mean, it would have left a dent if that was the case.
Matter of fact, right next to his trailer, he was parked near the edge of the drop off, and it's about a 45-degree angle down about 50 feet. So whoever did it came up that slope, and literally just palmed it like a basketball. Because he heard something like the bushes slightly out his window on that side, very slightly. So again, they're playing games.
That's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So they haven't really gotten aggressive up there, but it's kind of a cool place. They haven't really gotten aggressive. Some of the hunters have seen things and heard things, and other ones out, you're full of shit. I've been hunting my whole life, never seen them. You get both of that.
They ever have any of their game taken?
Yeah. I think Keith, he shot a doe one time. It was right before dark. And he went in and did it, run off in the brush a little bit. He started going after it, and he was like surrounded with growling and shit, like on 3 or 4 sides. They went back out, got a shotgun, and walked back in, took the deer, field dress, and left half, and boogied out of there. And like a day or 2 later, there was a watermelon there. If I remember right, they placed a watermelon there. Now, it was a particular kind of watermelon that my other friend up there, Mark, who might be on here, I haven't seen his name yet. He grows a special type of watermelon with yellow meat, but he doesn't live far from there. So put two and two together, you know. Mark didn't even know. He rode back up there with Keith, but he wasn't there, so he didn't even know the location or anywhere it happened. So there was a little bit of gifting, and those two guys really did a lot of research on that. They were putting peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the Ziploc baggies and tying it with some string. They'd bend over a skinny pine and let it go back up 12 or 15 feet. And they'd come back and check, 2 days later, and that Ziploc baggie would be unzipped, sandwich removed, and zipped back. Now, raccoon or anything else, they would have just chewed it all up, right?
Yeah, squirrel would chew it all up.
These things were able to figure out the Ziploc bag and close it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow. Dang, so what's the scariest thing you've had happen to you? I'm sure you've had to have something that really...
It was probably that night when Eddie the Eddie walked right up on my tent. That was probably the most intense for the 20, 30 seconds that it lasted until he walked away. And then it got better,
Yeah.
but still, it was like, holy shit, what just happened?
You would have been deaf.
Oh, if he wanted to. Yeah.
No, deaf.
Oh,
DEF.
Grizzly would have been firing off some guns.
Well, when I did see him that next trip, and I'm pretty sure I'm pretty accurate on my height estimate and width. He was 10 foot tall, 4 foot wide.
Yeah.
He'd go 700-800 pounds easy. I mean, he looked like a commercial refrigerator standing there with a head perched on top. Just a big, huge block, literally, in the darkness there.
Crazy.
I saw somebody in the text in the chat there asked me if I got to look at their faces, and no, I didn't, because it was just dark enough. You could clearly see their outlines and their eyes, but you couldn't really get any facial details because of the heavy cloud cover and stuff.
Yeah. So you got a silhouette and some eye shine, more or less, or...
Yeah. And it was kind of funny watching that little guy because he wouldn't stay still. I swear, it looked just like a human family standing there. The little boy in church, he just won't sit still. That was him.
Yeah, we had a report. I don't know what show it was. I think it was it you, Chris, with you, where the two guys were sitting in the truck and they were bitching about the kids on the swing?
Mm-hmm. It's Bill Hewitt.
Yeah,
Bill Hewitt was in Mayaka, and yeah, they were just doing a little night investigation, sitting in some chairs, and they weren't too far off from a playground, and they were like, "Man, well, these kids out here kind of late, hopping on the swing," and Bill didn't realize. He's like, "Man, there's some strong kids. They just one kick and they're full." They're full swing in one kick, and he didn't even put two and two together until later on after they left. And he's like, "Man, it's hot out here. Why are they fully clothed?" Just after they left, yeah, it all dawned on them what was going on. But they think the couple of juveniles are over there playing on the swing set.
Yeah, no parents around or nothing.
No, and lo and behold, later on, that whole entire swing set and playground gets removed. They have removed that from the park for no reason other than they just buried it. They pulled all the equipment, leveled it out, and got rid of it.
Done.
But everything else in the park is all there. Make any sense of that one? But yeah, that's pretty wild. They definitely like to play around, and I'm sure they are similar to kids, like you mentioned. Ants in their pants, don't want to sit around, just go. I mean, that makes total sense. Did you you had a story at one time? I remember you saying something about you had change. You left some change. So I want to say it was maybe up in Richland.
Yeah, actually it was. It was one of the other guys. We were walking out there to the power line. We found out it took about, an hour to hike out there to the power lines right where it crossed over there in the swamp area. And we were leaving. We saw signs that somebody else had been out there leaving like torn open bags of dog food and different stuff. And we started doing some of leaving fruits out there. And one of the other guys was with me at the time. He put change out there, thinking some like quarter, nickel, dime, whatever he had in his pocket, thinking that if it's somebody else out here, because the fruits and different things would disappear, they'd be gone. If somebody's out here, they'll steal the money if it's a person. And it didn't move. But turned out there was another researcher that was doing the same thing we were doing, unbeknownst to us. And he saw the change out there. He saw it. And that guy that I used to research with, I guess they hooked up, they met somewhere and exchanged those stories. But one time I took cantaloupes out there. I took like 2 cantaloupes, and there's a big, huge power line structure with a concrete base. It's up about 8 or 10 inches above the dirt level. I put the cantaloupes there. Next week we came back, they weren't touched, so I opened them, cut them in half, and laid them down. And then we'll come back a week later after that, all the seeds were piled up in a little, like a pyramid, perfect cone. But somebody with a hand scooped them out and made a little pile of the seeds. And then you could see we found one of the skins, the cantaloupe skins, and it looked like some big, huge square teeth were scraping all the meat out of it. You could see like 2 prominent white flat teeth marks. Like if you take it and scoop the meat out with your teeth. We found one of those, and it was like folded over, like it was thrown up to the side. We found one. So yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff goes on out there. Green Swamp is definitely a good place to go, but I don't like going to the Swift Mud parks because there's too many rules. You know, check in, check out, can't go here, can't leave campsite at night, and all that.
Brian's asking you about eye shine. Have you seen eye shine? And do you think it's self-illuminating?
I think it's self-illuminating because I've seen it change from that lime green to red. And I've seen it like where maybe they squint and blink and it's red. You know, and I've seen that before up there at Creepy Mountain.
You've seen them change color. Is that what you said?
I think they have. Let's see if I can explain this. I think that they can consciously change their eyes from like regular mode, for lack of a better term, to a night vision mode. So I'm thinking their normal eye shine color would be that like lime green, silvery look. And I think they can, I don't know if they close a membrane over their eye, like alligators have a nictinating eyelid, you know, for water, underwater. Right. If it's something like that, but it changes, and it is self-illuminating because I've seen it on pitch black nights where there's no moon, there's no flashlights on. It's just out there in the woods glowing, 2 of them. You know, and you can see them.
Creepy as hell.
Yeah. I've seen them blink, and I've seen them duck behind a tree with just one eye, and then you can see 2 eyes again in different places in Mississippi and Alabama.
Wow.
So that's in my experience. Now, you know, if someone ever, I'm sure the government, they've autopsied them and they know all about them. But, you know, if it ever gets out in the public, I'm sure that there's something very peculiar, advanced, you know, to their eyesight, because they can navigate in those woods at pitch black better than we can during the day. You'll never hear them if they don't want to be heard. They walk right up behind you, and they'll literally be looking over your shoulder. You won't have a clue unless they want you to.
It's crazy.
It is. It's very crazy.
You said you were doing some investigating for the big data collection website that we all know of. I ain't gonna mention the name. Yeah. What was the best, most intriguing experiences or encounters that people had that you really
it probably had to have been that there in the Green Swamp when I was finding the footprints and stuff, and I just kind of went through all the different stages of that. We did another one down in what's the name of that town? It's east of Lake Wales, off I believe 40. I forget the name of the town down there, but a young married couple in a trailer house, a double wide, pretty nice setup, you know. And they had, I don't know, let's say they had maybe an acre total. But right behind their fenced yard, they had a couple little kids right behind their fenced yard. It was just total woods. And the wife got up one night to get a drink of water or something, and she's looking out the kitchen window, and the motion lights go on. And they had a 4-foot chain link fence around their backyard so the kids could go out there and play. And she saw this thing literally staring at her, standing right on the outside of the fence, staring at her. And she said 7 or 8 foot tall, hairy. And when those lights came on, she could see it very good. So, and it just stared back at her. She looked at it, and she did like that with the curtains and ran back in went to bed, woke her husband up or whatever, you know. But we went out to their place, and we spent a whole day walking those woods back there. We stayed pretty late that night. It got cold, and they made a big fire going on out there and stuff. We never really did hear anything, but real nice folks. Their kids had seen Monkey Man or whatever they called it. You know, the little kids, like 6 and 5, or little kids. And one of them even drew a picture of it, and it was pretty comical. It looked like a spaghetti monster, but you know.
Yeah.
But they claimed that the kids had seen it too, and you know, made a picture of one of them. So we had a good laugh with that little 5-year-old scribbled picture, but you know, it's worried. That's what he saw. So.
Still, as a parent, you'd be a little bit worried about that one.
Oh yeah, they were.
You know,
They very were. And then it turned out some other people in the area were seeing and hearing stuff too. Once they started talking to some of their neighbors on that same fence line, they had heard stuff too.
that's crazy.
So after that, I kind of got wise with what the whole, you know, what the strategy was for that whole, like I said, data collectors and stuff. So
Right.
I kind of, actually, I got mouthy with him and he fired me. He wanted all our plaster tracks from the Green Swamp. He wanted us. And Cliff Brackman, they were down from, you know, wherever. We met him over there towards Tampa, Hillsborough River. And I brought all the plaster casts that we collected. The other two guys didn't go because they didn't want to go. And they, you know, who wanted those tracks. He wanted me to give him the plaster tracks. And he swore up and down he'd make copies and ship them back. But they're like, no.
You'd never see him again.
Exactly. So that got me fired.
Do you still have those, or somebody have them?
They actually weren't mine because the other guy had the plaster, the dental stone. So it was his dental stone. He cast them. He got them.
That's how you kept them. So they're still around somewhere. That's cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember hearing he figured out or looked online and figured out how to make like a mother mold or rubber mold and duplicate them.
Right.
And sent a duplicate to Jeff Meldon out there, and I guess he's got it in one of them in his collection. It was a duplicate. I don't think it was the original, but they talked on the phone quite a bit about the different, you know, dermal ridges and because the toes you could see the fingernails or the toenails like half moon. Because some people think, you know, maybe they have claws. Well, I can tell you, they're fingernails like ours and toenails, because those tracks clearly showed the toenail impressions in the front where the toes slid into
it. Yeah,
it was perfect medium. It was just the right amount of dampness. It wasn't standing water, you know, and it picked up detail like really, really, really good.
And it sounds like you had the mixture nice and loose to the point where it conformed it to everything perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did one of a gator print, a really, really big gator print down in Everglades. I mean, you could see the scale, the skin scales and everything on it. I mean, it was perfect. But yeah, we learned the port loose where it's not real thick. It may take a little bit longer to dry, but to tell you what, it'll definitely pick up the fine details better if there are there. You know, the substrate has a lot to do with it too, as you know, as you mentioned.
If it's leaves and pine duff or pine, you're not going to get any detail whatsoever. Or it could be dry sand. It's just going to be.
Yeah, once the fall in, it's a pain. So, what do you think these things are? What's your personal opinion? You get the woo factor, you get the UFO portals. What do you think? Animal? What's your take on it?
I think they're definitely human, half human. They have a language. They walk upright. Their eyes are in the front of their head, not their, you know, up to the sides. All those things define primates, right? They have a language. I mean, so do chimps and gorillas to a certain extent. But I think these things are some type of prehistoric level of evolution human. Now maybe it came they developed from the ancient Gigantopithecus, you know, that they found some fossils in China, wherever, Southeast Asia, and maybe they crossed the land bridge. But I think they've evolved even more, as we all have, right? That people have, as literally every living thing has evolved over the last 10,000, 50,000 years. Mm-hmm. So maybe when they came over here, they started, you know, mating with human women. You hear stories of that through the Indian tribes and a lot of their lore. So maybe it's created a whole new species over the the last 50,000, 100,000 years. But I do believe they're human to some extent, and I
Well,
think
we
they're
know
extremely intelligent and cunning, very, very much so.
we know like there's a lot of ancestry of Indians and what's been discovered in Indian mounds of giants and giant skeletons. So maybe you could be right on that. Who knows? It's very possible.
So in the beginning, I wanted to prove to everybody these, that they're out there. I was gonna try to figure out ways I can hunt one down and present a body and do all this crazy stuff. And it's like, you know what? People are silly. You're not going to convince them in anything unless they see it with their own two eyes. And I know I don't even want to prove it to anybody anymore. I just want to go out and experience this stuff. And so far, I've been lucky. I haven't had any real aggressive encounters or anything that's made me forget it and just go home and never go back to the woods. So it's been a really cool ride for me so far. I met a lot of great folks and gone to a lot of cool places. And that's kind of what my strategy is now, just experience as much as I can.
Excellent. I appreciate you
coming
on. I got one for both of you. Something that popped up I'd found on the web. This was it's crazy. Dang it. Hold on. This is a coyote on a power line with a rat in its mouth. I don't know much more details other than that, but it's hung up on a power line.
It's crazy.
I mean, you can see how high that is. Now, I'm not saying it's a Bigfoot, but what the heck?
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know what to think about that.
That's just wild. I mean, what could have even done that? I don't know, but just weird. But anyways, Mr. Pat, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad that
absolutely. Thank you.
I know a bunch of people have been trying to get you to do their podcast, and I got you first. So, no, I appreciate you coming on, man. I really do. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you.
Numerous years.
And from coast to coast around the world. Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
See you.